Hello and welcome back to part two of Marina by TS Eliot, where we'll be looking at the um, poetry and the meaning and how the two are interweaved together. If you remember part one, we spoke about the opening of the poem: what seas, what shores, what grey rocks, and what islands, what water lap in the bough, and scent of pine and the wood thrush singing through the fog. What images return, oh my daughter? So what images return? Of course, the images of affirming life, because he's got his daughter back, based on the model of Pericles seeing his daughter, who he thought was dead, and then a reference back to the life he's left. Those who sharpen the tooth of the dog, meaning death. Those who glitter with the glory of the hummingbird, meaning death. Those who sit in the sty of contentment, meaning death. Those who suffer the ecstasy of the animals, meaning death. We spoke about how they could be references to four of the seven deadly sins: gluttony, pride, sloth, and lust, perhaps, but also those were the insubstantial, if you like, things of his life. And we did mention the reference to Ecclesiastes, how everything was without meaning unless you have a God. Well, in this particular case, this could be to do with his uh, religion, his faith in God, being used under the cloak and the model, if you like, of Pericles. We got as far as are become insubstantial. So notice those four incantations: those who sharpen, those who glitter, those who sit, those who suffer, all are become insubstantial, reduced by a wind, a breath of pine, and the wood song fog, by this grace dissolved in place. Think of that. We return to this image of the woodbine, the pine, the breath of the pine coming through the fog. It's clearing. The fog is clearing. It reminds you of murder in the cathedral. Now is my way clear. Now is the meaning plain. Temptation shall not come in this kind again. And this idea of a revelation, a new life, if you like. And then these questions again. What is this face? Well, remember at the beginning, what seas, what water, what scent, what images? Well, what is this face? Less clear and clearer, the pulse in the arm, less strong and stronger, given or lent, more distant than stars and nearer than I. Whispers and small laughter between leaves and hurrying feet, under sleep where all the waters meet. Beautiful sort of transition here. Reminds us again of Murder in the Cathedral, that moment of realization that Thomas went through between sleep and waking, early in the morning when the bird cries. You've thought of further morning that nothing lasts, but the wheel turns, and the nest shall be rifled and the bird mourns. This idea that if you want to be a saint, Thomas à Becket, the tempter saying, after a while, they'll say there was nothing special about you as time goes by. Nothing lasts, not even your sainthood. But they're the wrong reasons to want to believe. And it's a little bit like this. What is this face? Less clear and clearer. In other words, what is the real meaning of what's happening to me? What am I really seeing? Now, when we think of this image of the face, there's a very interesting comment here. The soldiers who spit upon the face, which angels did desire to have grace, is from a poem by Herbert. This idea that somebody spat at Christ, not knowing what that face was, the face of God. And this was a poem by the great Christian poet Herbert. Sort of an echo, if you like, of that in there. But the whole chunk of that bit, what is this face, less clear and clearer, pulse in the arm, less strong and stronger. T.S. Eliot often put these counterpoints together between sleep and waking, less strong and stronger, between the image and the shadow, between the image and the shadow falls the shadow, that type of thing. Given or lent, is this been given to me forever, or is it being lent to me? You can never be certain in life of what's happening. How distant is it? More distant than the stars? Nearer than the eye? That reminds me of a joke, funnily enough, by Spike Milligan, when he went to the opticians and said, I need some glasses. And the optician took him outside and said, look up at the night sky, what do you see? And Spike said, I see stars. He said, well, how far do you want to see? It's the furthest you can see, isn't it? The stars. More distant than the stars and nearer than the eye. So in other words, this opposites put together to make you realise that the truth that he's talking about, the reality is not of this world. It can't be measured in terms of this world. Whispers and small laughter between leaves and hurrying feet. Recurrent image in Eliot's poetry. We think of it in Burnt Norton, the laughter and coming over the dead leaves from his own childhood experiences. Undersleep, where all the waters meet. In Prufrock, you have voices under sleep, waking a dead world, So this undersleep, this not of this world, of another world, where all the waters meet, of course, is a very locked in reference, imagery-wise, to the ship sailing. And you have this amazing stanza, bowsprit cracked with ice and paint cracked with heat. I made this, I've forgotten and remember. You see, this opposites again, I've forgotten and remember. He made the ship that crashed. He's responsible for making this thing that didn't last. And this reference to bowsprit is interesting because he pronounced it in 1933 recording in a certain way that rhymed with bowsprit. Okay, and at the end of the lines addressed in his recording, he had a particular pronunciation of certain words to make the meter work, to make the sound tapestry work. Cracked with ice, cracked with heat. This is a reference from Baudelaire. This idea that the whole ship is cracked up with ice and paint cracked with heat. So these opposites, the ice and the heat, he couldn't stand any of them. The ship wasn't fit for ocean going. This is the ship that he thought his daughter had died in. I made this, I've forgotten and remember. Remembering one of TS Eliot's poems, he says, I remember, well, it's Murder in the Cathedral again, actually. He says, I remember, not worth forgetting. He's been asked to think back to his happy times of his youth. He's been tempted to go back in time. I remember, he says, not worth forgetting. Incredible line of memorable poetry. That this is a ship that was not fit for purpose that he built. He looks at the rigging weak and the canvas rotten, between 1 June and another September. Isn't that interesting? Not between 1 June and September, but between 1 June and another September, a sort of a general feel to that, a condition of life rather than a specific. Made this unknowing, half-conscious, unknown, my own. So my own, but it's unknown, it's half-conscious, it's unknown. So the thing he made, he didn't know what he was making. Our lives, without God, you may suggest, as the message of this poem, has no meaning. We think it does, but it doesn't. It's an emptiness. Nothing lasts. The garboard strake leaks, the seams need caulking. Now, caulking is an interesting reference as well, because and the garboard strake began to leak. T.S. Eliot, Rudyard Kipling uses that word in his the seams need caulking, he says. These are nautical terms that he's picked up on. This form, this face, this life, live in a world of time. You see that? Beyond me. You see, he's referring to a world that is not captive to time. It's a world beyond. Live in a world of time beyond me. Let me resign my life for this life. My speech for that unspoken. The awakened lips parted, the hope, the new ships. So much in that. This life is being given up for a better life. In other words, an eternal life of faith. And this is where he sees his ship floundering, but he needs a new ship, a new nave, a new way to sail in the right direction. But if you listen to that whole stanza again, you'll see how it all seems to poetically bolster itself up with these memorable lines. Though. Bowsprit cracked with ice and paint cracked with heat. I made this, I have forgotten and remember. The rigging weak and the canvas rotten, between 1 June and another September. Made this unknowing, half-conscious, unknown, my own. The garboard strake leaks, the seams need caulking, this form, this face, this life. Live in a world of time beyond me. Let me resign my life for this life. My speech for that unspoken. The awakened lips parted, the hope of the new ships. Beautifully fits together. Rhythmically, metrically, although it's not it's not a regular meter, it's an irregular meter. It's not regular rhyme, it's a free verse, but within that are the rhythms and rhymes of speech, which are forged to be very memorable in that way. And then we lead on here to our final stanza. What seas, what shores, what granite islands towards my timbers, and wood rush calling through the fog, my daughter. So it's established that it's his daughter that's given him all this joy, but he's reflecting in a sense. Although he's using Pericles seeing his daughter again, he's reflecting on something even bigger, which is the life he used to lead compared to the insight and the revelation that he's had now. He's using the Pericles story as a vehicle, as a model in which to get his point across, in which to hang all this wonderful poetry on. So I think that doesn't cover the poem completely, but it hopefully gives you some pointers towards further reading of it and further comparison with other of T.S. Eliot's poetry, particularly the stuff that's written after this. And, it's interesting to look up what the references are, T.S. Eliot's own words on it, listen to him reading it himself to see how he phrases the words. And I hope you have lots of time to enjoy T.S. Eliot and to not worry if you don't feel that you understand it fully, because you never understand a great work of art fully. Always has more to say. T.S. Eliot himself said that the meaning in a good poem, he said, is not exhausted by one person's reading or one person's interpretation of it. It has to be looked at again and again. It withstands that sort of analysis. If you had a sign that said no parking here, and it explained the rules of the parking, and you went over and over and over, you'd soon get bored, wouldn't you? So you know functionally what those words mean. It's like Valéry said that the prose is functional. It goes from here to here. Has a meaning, and once that meaning's given up, the words give up. Not with T.S. Eliot. Not with poetry, says Valéry. Poetry is like dance. See, prose is like walking, going from one place to another. It's for a reason. It's functional. Poetry is like dancing. It doesn't go anywhere. It's just the look of it, the beauty of it, the movement of it. It's not functional. It doesn't discharge its load in the sense that prose does. And this is what you find in great poetry, that it's the way the words are working together that create the artistry and the beauty that you return to, and the thoughts that you ponder on. That these are great thoughts, and he wants you to ponder on them. That's why he says lines like, live in a world of time beyond me. It didn't just say, I need this new experience, it's making me feel good. He said, live in a world, live in a world. This repetition is a different type of living, but we see it differently in the new living. Like Shakespeare put out the light and then put out the light. We see the second one with full power because of the first one that's introduced it. Live in a world of time beyond me. Let me resign my life for this life. Let me resign this, but let me resign my life for this life. He uses the same word. He uses the same word, but then has a different meaning in the context of its new use. These are all the tricks that are played. These are all the techniques and strategies that are used, if you like, in the shaping of these words. He spent so long thinking about them as an artist. What do they mean? How can I enhance their meaning? So my advice would be read it over and over out loud, listen to it, and live with it, and see how the meanings start to come alive in your own imagination. And I do hope that you've found this video part 2 enjoyable. And look out, I'll be coming back with more poetry chats at a future date. I wish you well.